Today, we are talking about how simple daily routines can help us raise helpful children. Welcome to the Prepared Enough podcast, a podcast for the mom who wants to manage motherhood well and create a home where her family can thrive. I'm your host, Natasha Mila, former teacher, mom of four, and firm believer that a well-prepared home can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. In this podcast, we'll explore simple ways to design organized, intentional spaces and rhythms that slowly build your child's responsibility and bring more ease into your day. The smallest adjustments often make the biggest impact. We will work to find those small ways we can adapt your home during the ebbs and flows of the seasons of family life. If you're ready for your home to work with you, not against you, you're in the right place. Hit follow and let's get started. Hello. Welcome to the Prepared Enough podcast. We are in the month of January. We're in the middle of the month already. And last episode, and we're continuing on in January. This month, we are resetting a bit and getting in a good, realistic mindset about how our homes and our routines might be affecting our kids' behavior. Last episode, we talked about how our home itself could be contributing to our children's behavior. And today we are talking about how our routines might be contributing to their behavior and how we can place more emphasis on helpful routines to save ourselves some headaches and hopefully lean into raising more helpful children overall. I want to preface this episode that when I say raising helpful children, I mean like immediately helpful. I do think it's plausible to say that leaning into your kids helping out now would lead them to be more helpful as they got older, but that's going to require your adult parenting continuous expectation that they are helpful as a teenager, and how helpful they can be is going to depend on your lifestyle and how involved they are with the family versus how involved they are with athletics or work, etc. So just changing your routines to gain some help from your kids for like a single year is going to be beneficial in saving you time this year specifically, but moving forward, it's going to be up to you. I'm also talking to you from like the parenting perspective of having young children myself. So like, I have no idea, what it's going to look like in 10 years from now personally, right? So I don't have a personal perspective with older children. So that's where we can look to women that have older children and ask them what they did to raise such wonderful, helpful humans. Okay, moving on into the episode. I'm going to apologize again because I seriously have had this scratchy voice for like a month straight. So it feels like that. I think it's only been like 2 weeks because I think I lost my voice like the day before I got on to record the last podcast episode, and so now recording this one, it's been like 2 weeks since then, and I still have this scratchy, stuffy congestion, and it's just frustrating, but I don't feel sick, which is good. I just can't kick the congestion, so oh well, it is what it is. Okay, so thinking back to my own childhood, I don't think that when my mom would lightly suggest me doing something helpful that I would just like jump right into it. I wasn't a horrible kid, but I certainly wasn't the easiest. And we're all a bit selfish, right? Like even as adults, but kids especially, like, because really when you're a kid, you just don't see how much work your parents are doing for you. You really don't see that until you are a parent yourself, right? When you're a kid, you kind of just live selfishly in your own little kid world. Clear my plate? Ugh, that takes me forever. So how do we motivate our small, unknowingly selfish humans? Well, we trick them. So if we can sneak something helpful into their daily routines so they don't even think about it being helpful, it's just like the everyday expectation, then voila, they're helping without even knowing it. So how do we sneakishly establish these helpful routines? Well, in a second, I'm going to list a few specific routines that I think you're going to like if you're a mom of young humans. But generally, we are going to need a routine to start slow and kind of like build upon itself. And we're going to need a routine to be predictable. like it makes sense to do it every day, right? Or not every day, but whatever the frequency is, we are going to need it to have to be repeated and repeated and repeated, and maybe remind our kids after a while when they get like, maybe we don't have to remind them after they get it down, right? So we remind our kids they are repeating it, or they're repeating it. And maybe we don't have to remind them, they got it down, right? But then in like 6 months, they're going to get lazy and you're going to have to remind them again. So it's going to be something that you can't just set it and forget it. You're the parent, and you're going to have to be like, oh, remember, did we forget about this? I've noticed that this has been kind of getting slacked off and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to need to put the ownership onto your children a little bit. So we're going to take a look specifically at a few, and then what I just rambled about a second ago is going to make more sense. So daily routines where kids can be helpful and not just independent. Of course, there are like many ways kids can be independent, and some of them overlap with being helpful when they are little, because just really when little kids can take care of themselves better, it is actually really helpful for us, specifically as the moms. But so here are 5 areas where you might not have even thought about there being a problem, where you can kind of reframe something normal to be slightly more helpful. These are areas where when kids do something well, it is especially more helpful than when they just do it to get it done without really thinking about it. So we're going to list out 5 routines and talk about how the child can build helpfulness as they get older in each area. So routines that we're going to talk about. The first one, all right, making beds, right? All of these routines are things that like aren't like surprising, right? But we're going to talk about them, and maybe you haven't thought about a couple things that I'm going to talk about. So making your beds in the morning, like for the kids. So I mean, if you're an adult, you should make your bed too. Maybe. I don't know. Some people don't, and I'm not telling you what to do in your house, but if you want your kids to make their beds, and you want their beds made, or maybe you're already making their beds, how can you get your kids to start making their beds? Now, if they have a couple different blankets on their bed and they're really little, like 3 and under, big blankets are going to be really tricky for them and hard to make. So how can you start small? Well, do they have like a tiny baby blanket or whatever they've slept with that's a tinier one? Do they have stuffed animals on their bed? Do they have a pillow on their bed? Can they start by fluffing their pillow, like fixing up their pillow? Can that be their first part of making their bed? Do they have a small blanket that you can teach them how to fold and put at the bottom of their bed so they can contribute that part? Can they set up their stuffed animals along the side of their bed so that they're not just like crazy everywhere? Okay, so those are kind of like just some tiny little ways that your kid can start making the bed, and you can add those things on together. So say they start by fluffing the pillow and they get really good at that, and then you're like, okay, I think you can start now. Once I make your blankets and then you come up and you make your pillow up and you line up your stuffed animals now too. And then you can add things on. You can keep going there. You can say, okay, so now I've made your big blanket. Now you need to fluff your pillow, line up your stuffed animals, and fold up your small blanket, right? So and then eventually they get to doing the entire bed, right? So you can start small and build your way up as they get a little bit older. It might also help to set up their beds in the first place to accommodate a younger child if you want them to be making it in the morning. So for like a younger kid, if you have a top sheet and a comforter, that's going to be a lot trickier than like a blanket, right? And so just something to think about if they have if they have blankets and like multiple blankets, all of these things on their bed, it's going to make it trickier, and it's going to make you have more work because there's more to be made on the bed. And so either you're going to have to let it go and just have the bed not be made all the way like you want it, or you can try to take some things off of the bed or make it more accommodating for a younger kid. Okay, so that's making beds. Number 2, setting the table. So this is something where kids can definitely help out. A lot of kids like to help cooking or like be in the kitchen when you're kind of making food. But something that's really helpful is when they set the table for you. And so think about all the things on a table setting, right? Again, you can start small and build your way up. So maybe you have a really young kid and you could, like, even a 2-year-old or even younger, like 1.5, like inching towards 2, they can put napkins out on everybody's table spot. So maybe you have one kid put out all the napkins, and or like if you, I'm going to talk about like one kid specifically, and then from there, then you build up and say, okay, you can go grab all the kid forks. Okay, maybe you have your kid forks on a lower shelf or something for the kids to reach. And you say, whoever's, set out 3 kid forks, if you had 3 kids in your family or something like that. And then that kid can set out the kid forks. Then they can add on the adult forks and stuff. And then they can think about, then they can get a little more independent and ask you what's for dinner and think in their heads, like, what I need to set the table with. So, okay, I need napkins and I'm going to need spoons and forks today, both. Or like, I'm going to need a knife and a fork and whatever. And you can add that on, like them thinking about what the table actually needs. They can put waters in people's places and all kinds of stuff, right? So you just think about what that whole table setting needs and how you can add things on. Now, you're going to eat however many meals you normally eat at your home on a daily basis. Like maybe you eat breakfast every day at your house, or maybe you eat dinner every day at your house, or maybe you eat all 3 meals at your house, maybe even some snacks. Probably you're not setting the table for snacks, but for the meals, maybe you're you're at least putting silverware out, right? And plates out and stuff. And so think about when your children could help you with that, when it makes the most sense, and just start with like one of those times. And then they'll feel like they're part of that process. Like, oh, I'm part of making breakfast here, or getting breakfast on the table. I should say they're part of getting breakfast on the table, because we need all those things on the table to help get breakfast ready for everybody. And so they can join you in creating that, like in getting that all ready for everybody. So setting the table is another routine. Clearing their table places. So everybody's going to eat food at your table at some point during the day. How are they going to clean up their own table places? So if you have, cloth napkins, are going to need to go to the hamper, right? If you have regular napkins, those are going to need to go to the garbage, disposable napkins, right? And you have silverware and plates or bowls or whatever you're having, and where are those going to go? So for little kids, again, start small. Like, okay, you're going to put your fork in the sink and your napkin in the hamper. Those are very doable things for small kids, especially if the hamper is on the same level as the table that you're eating at. If it's not, then you're just going to have to probably come up with a spot where you're putting napkins. I assume you probably already have a spot for that, because if you're a parent, you're not going to be like walking all the way up to the second floor just to put napkins. Maybe you are, but I imagine that you're probably then putting them like at the base of the stairs. So where do you normally put them as the adult? And then have your kids put them in the same spot, right? So they could do those 2 things when they're really, really small, and drop if they can reach, or they can put their fork on the counter, if they can't reach the sink or something like that. I mean, I'm just talking dropping it into the sink, right? But if you don't want them doing that, they can put it up on top of the counter. And then, as they get a little bit older, they can do those things still and add on carrying their plate over to the counter. And maybe you don't, maybe they're still like 3. And my 3-year-old is not very coordinated still, and he would not do very good right now dumping his food into the garbage can without making a big mess, especially if the garbage can is like kind of full, So I just have him put it up on the counter. But our older girls, they dump their food into the actual garbage and they put their plate on the counter. Our sink is a really deep sink, and I don't want them dropping our glass plates into the sink. So we have a rule of putting it up on the counter, which does mean that I have to make sure the counter is cleared off enough for them to have a spot to put it on. So yes, all things you have to think about. But and then at some point, our dilemma in our house is that the garbage pullout is in the way of the dishwasher. So, they have to pull the garbage out, close the garbage, and then go open the dishwasher after that. Like both can't be open and opened up and whatnot. And the counter where they would put their plates on is right in front of the dishwasher. And so for them to be able to like open it, and I don't know how well they'd be able to reach up onto the counter with the open dishwasher in the way. So we have a little bit of a space dilemma for our kids putting their dishes into the dishwasher. I also like to run the dishes like on a cycle that's not the normal cycle, so it's a little less water and extreme. And so I do rinse our dishes pretty good before we put them in there. So my next step is, a lot of people would probably be to put the dishes into the dishwasher, but our personal next step would probably be to rinse off the dishes before you put them on the counter. So that's something that we will probably add on next for our bigger girls. And then eventually somebody will be taking on like the chore of putting all the dishes into the dishwasher and things like that. Okay, moving on to number 4, laundry. So this is a little bit involved. So this is involved, you're throwing things into the hamper correctly. You're putting clothes away, and you're maybe folding your own clothes. So that's kind of like the progression that you're taking. So little kids are throwing their clothes in the hamper. Now, when kids are 1 year old, they're not going to be turning their clothes right side out. When kids are young 2-year-olds, maybe all the way through to, it just depends on your kid's ability, they might still not be turning their clothes right side out. And probably you're helping them get some of their clothes off, especially like buttoned things and whatnot. And so you can be handing them their clothes to go put into the hamper when they're those ages, right? When they are getting a little bit older, you can start with the socks. Like, make sure you take your socks off by the toes so that they're the right side out. So when you put them into the hamper, your socks are the right side out and they're not all inside out in a little ball, because that drives everybody bonkers and then they don't get clean. Or the parent has to undo every single one and it drives everybody crazy. Okay, so that's a place to start. And then they can do the rest of their clothes once they figure out how to get things right side out. Now, when you take your clothes off, you are expected to either take them off correctly or know how to turn them right side out, so that when you put them into the hamper, they are all right side out. And when I put them into the laundry machine, I don't have to think about them, because I know you put them into the hamper correctly, and the way they're going into the washing machine is the correct way that clothes are supposed to be put into the washing machine. Then a step up from that is going to be, I'm folding, the mom is folding all the clothes, and I'm going to put them in a little hamper for you, and you're going to put them away in your own drawers. That's another part of the laundry, right? And then eventually you're leading up to the kids, then the next step, I guess, would be folding their own clothes. You maybe are still running the washing machine, but they're folding their own clothes, or folding some of their clothes, like, okay, now you can help with your socks. Put all of your socks together in pairs, stack up your underwear nicely, whatever you do. And then the next step is going to be like, they're folding all of their clothes, everything, pants, shirts, sweatshirts, everything is getting folded. They get a hamper full of clean clothes and they have to take care of it entirely. Then the next step is like, now you have some job to do with the actual starting of the laundry machine and the dryer. And that's just going to depend what it looks like in your house. We just have like one hamper in our house, so I don't have any intention of changing that anytime soon. Just it requires more clothing items for everybody if you're going to do individual loads and whatnot. So maybe we'll do girls' room has a hamper and boys' room, and they can share the task and whatnot. I don't know. We'll see what it looks like when our kids get older, but we're not to that point yet. But that is a goal at some point, is for everybody to be doing some part in the laundry. Okay, and then, so that was number 4, laundry. So we did making beds, we did setting the table, we did clearing the table places, we did laundry, and the number 5 one is taking care of your own entryway items. So this could mean all your outerwear, and it obviously is going to mean all your outerwear and your shoes, and I guess that's an outerwear piece of item. And then it also is probably meaning some school stuff if you go to school outside of your house. So, your kids are going to like slowly be able to do things like for themselves. It's actually super interesting in our house because we have this span of like a 1-year-old to a 6, almost, 6.5-year-old. And so it's interesting to see like honestly, our almost 5-year-old here is doing probably more than our 6.5-year-old. She's a little more responsible. But like we kind of have the progression in our house currently. Like we have a span of progression in our house currently. But anyway, so you're like, your little kids are going to be able to go get their shoes out of their bucket themselves, and they can go put them away in their bucket themselves. Like, okay, go put your boots away, and either they're going to put them on a mat or they're going to put them in the box. Part of this is going to be making sure you have a spot for everything, where everything needs to go, so that your kids do know where to put things when they are expected to take care of their items. But so like little kids are going to be able to take that, you're helping them with their shoes, and then they're going to go put their things away. Maybe they can reach a hook and they can hang their stuff up back on the hook. As you get bigger, now your kids are taking folders out of their backpacks, filling up their waters for school, hanging up their coats, and everything is in its spot now when they come in the door, or wherever you decided your kids are ready to do it. So like, I don't have my kids taking their folder things, like their papers, out of their folders or anything like that for school yet, because I don't trust that they can like throw the correct things away and keep the correct things and give me what I need. So those folders go into a little spot, and then I take care of them and I put them back into their backpacks. But as they get older, that would definitely be like an expectation that they just kind of take care of their own like folders, obviously, as they get older in school. Coats and stuff for our little kids, our hooks are just a little bit high right now, and so lifting their heavy backpacks up onto the hooks is tricky. Sometimes our oldest can get her coat hung up there, but yeah, and it's all just a lot more crowded in the winter months, but they are able to do a lot more in the summer months when there's a little less going on and they don't have coats to hang up and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it's just going to depend on your area, your space, the age of your kids, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about when I say how much each kid is going to be able to take care of depending on their age, but you should be expecting them to take care of something in the entryway of your house. And don't, like, a lot of people think that kids are less capable than they actually are. So little babies who are like 10, if your kid's walking, if your kid is walking, they're capable of doing some things for themselves, and they're actually usually really excited to do it. So if you say, oh, go put your boots in the box, like, they're very happy to go do that for you. They think it's fun. It's like a game for them. So don't lower your expectations just because you have a little tiny kid, Okay. So we've chatted about 5 specific routines and areas and how you can kind of change those as your kids grow up and add on some things, but we're still really kind of talking the younger years here. And as you go into the older years, obviously your kids are going to be doing a lot of things more for themselves, right? Independent. So we're talking a lot more like independence and how that can be helpful. Obviously your kids are going to be a lot more independent and doing more helpful chores later on in their life, but we're kind of still just chatting the younger years here. But before we wrap up this episode, I just want to share a few things on how we can reframe our kids' mindset around helping. So I have 4 little points to make here. So the first one is I think it's really important to help our kids reframe helping as more about their identity as a human, kind of, and less about compliance. So obedience is important, but I don't want my kids to help out around the house just because I, the big bossy pants of our house, ordered them to do so. I want them to understand that their helpful routines are them being part of our family, like signaling to them like, you matter here. And I want them to feel like their contributions around the house really do make a big difference in our household. Number 2, why is making something a routine more beneficial than randomly asking for help here and there? Oftentimes when we ask for help, it's like, even if it's like a really quick, like, oh, can you help me really, really quick? We're met with resistance from our kids. That's expected. It's like it's kind of like how you as the adult get irritated when your kids come and interrupt you when you're really focused, and then they're like, hey mom, can you help me with this? And you're like, your immediate reaction is oftentimes irritability, right? So yeah, so like this is the same thing with kids. They're busy doing something, and though it doesn't look important to you, you're like, hey, can you help me with this? And they're like, ugh, So predictability is going to lower, like routines, predictable routines. Those are going to lower that resistance. So when something happens every day, it's just because something happens and it's expected, right? So there's a lot less big emotions around it. Kids are definitely more relaxed when they know what's coming up next in their life and what's happening next. They kind of like relax into those routines. And while spontaneity isn't bad, routines are good. Okay, number 3, there is a difference between the adult asking the child to help and the child owning a task of their own. So if we can shift our kids into taking a routine task on with ownership, like it's theirs to do for the family, then it feels a lot less like they're pitching in extra, like you're asking for all this extra help from them. They're just feeling like it's theirs to do, right? Okay, and number 4, the last little mindset shift that I often forget about myself, being the bossy McBossy pants of our house, is that I sometimes forget that while my husband and I are the leaders of our house, we are also part of a family team. And that means that every player has a part to play. So every person needs to contribute their part in order for the team to succeed as a whole. Kids need to remember that their part is needed for the family team to be a success. Contribution should be normal and expected and not like praised into existence. So that doesn't mean we don't say thank you for certain things or like aren't happy about people doing certain things around the house. It just means that nobody's getting M&Ms for clearing their table spot. Like that's just, we all clear our table spot in some way, shape, or form. That's just what we do as part of our family, as being a member of this team. So yeah. Okay, so wrapping up now. Before you go crazy and try to begin like 30 new routines this week, just start slow and add one tiny thing in if you think that you need something going on in your house. I mean, I feel like I always can add things in. And yeah, that's called progress. We're always like making tiny little tweaks that might just be something that make a really big difference. Okay, so how you can think about that is, I guess you can ask yourself, where could my child do one small thing today instead of me doing it for them or me doing everything for them? And in which one of the areas we talked about earlier today could you alter something small where your kid could help out more? I'll remind you, the routines we kind of talked about today were making beds, setting the table, clearing table places, laundry, and taking care of their own entryway items. And so it might just be that like maybe you just start off with your kid folding one of their bed blankets. That's something small and very doable. So it can just be something really, really tiny. It should be something really small and actually doable. Don't go all crazy and start small. I think that you'll see such a big difference even from just this tiny little thing. All right, that is it, y'all. Thank you for listening to another episode of Prepared Enough. We will be back in February. In February, we are diving into the bathroom specifically. We will create a bathroom caddy for little kids, and we will talk about simple daily hygiene routines for, again, little kids. I'm always talking about younger kids on this podcast right now because that is the world that I'm living in. Okay, if you are interested in getting our paid subscriber videos, each month I send out a video to paid subscribers of this podcast, and I'll link how to become a member in the show notes. But this month we are doing a sneak peek into 3 small areas of our home that are in need of a refresh and what my plans are to make that happen for 2026. And in February, paid supporters will get to take a look into our house's bathroom caddy and our bathroom space for kids. It's usually like I'm always attempting to be themed in our paid supporters videos to theme to the same month as the podcast theme is. But in January, it's just been like an overview month. So I thought this like a little sneak peek video would be kind of fun. Okay, now that's actually all. Drink water, eat snacks, everyone. Talk next time. Tash.